to my corner. I had originally planned for this video to be an overview of how I did at the Fay Folk Art Festival that happened on September 6th. But I ended up not really recording anything. One, it was super busy all day, so I was kind of really wrapped up into that, and I didn't really have a chance to record. And then also, I didn't have time to get permission because there were kids everywhere, and of course, not everyone wants to be on camera. And just with the crowd size and all the moving pieces that were going everywhere, I just decided that it was going to be best if I didn't really film anything. I took a couple of pictures, but yeah, no film, so no video. I will talk about how that fair went and how my sales went and everything in a different video, but for today, I wanted to go over a fun personal project. So way back in the 90s, in the 1990s, when I had first decided to start writing with intention, I had begun developing a high fantasy world setting to write my stories in. I was a newbie to world building, I was a newbie to writing, and so, all of my exposure had been from what I had read, what I watched, like the movies that I watched, the books that I read, and of course playing D&D. So my initial attempts at world building were very much based off of my D&D experience, and I was basically just trying to slap a new label on D&D 3rd edition. And for the stories that I had planned, that wasn't really working. I really needed to come up with more original, I guess you could say original ideas, but really just ideas that were tailored more to fit the kind of storytelling that I wanted to write. And so over the years, I have been evolving this world to just fit my storytelling style better, and to explore the kinds of themes and challenges that I wanted to review, and to not look so much like a carbon copy of D&D. One of the biggest things that held me up for the longest time was the magic system, and I'm kind of a chaos magic kind of person. That is really the style that I prefer. I don't care if you're talking about low or high. I like the chaos method where, it's all based on willpower, feelings, vibes. I don't know. It resonates with me and I like it. And so I wasn't really thinking about that as an option for a high fantasy because no one was really doing that very much. Everyone had very hard rules and structure, and it wasn't vibes. And so when I was developing my urban fantasy setting, that one is, that genre is much more free with how you can do your magic system. And so I had come up with a chaos magic based system for that world, and then I thought, well, why couldn't I apply that to a high fantasy? High fantasy and urban fantasy are pretty much the same but with different set dressings, you know what I mean? So why couldn't I do that? So I did, and I used the exact same magic system with maybe just slight tweaks here and there that aren't even system tweaks. They're more like cultural tweaks for just to fit the specific cultures of those worlds a little better. But they're essentially the same system, and that kind of led into, okay, how do I justify them having the same system? When they're two different worlds. That led to the multiverse thing and the mini veils and blah blah. Long story short, my urban fantasy and my high fantasy canonically are in the same multiverse. So it's like the same gods, the same rules, the same all that, but they're in different dimensions. So, and there's actually other dimensions too. There's not just those two. There's other ones that would allow for planar travel and things like that. But I didn't really go too deep in the world building on those. It's more an overview of here's the kinds of things you can find in this veil. Like with the Grim Veil, traveling back and forth, portal magic, all of that is uh, not super common, but reasonably common enough to where it's built into the world setting. And I did not want to have that for the high fantasy. I wanted it to be a fishbowl where that was it. They weren't doing a lot of traveling. It was just this little playground for myself. There are 9 veils altogether. 8 of them are on this side and they all play together and you can go back and forth and have a good old time. And one of them is over here by its lonesome and only the gods can reach it. No one else really has the power to reach it. It is a fishbowl. And that is the world of Tevun. So I had the magic system, I had the multiverse, and then I had the name. I went ahead and that was not the name that I originally had. It is like the third name that I've had. I'm not going to tell you what the other names were because they were not great. But it's called Tevun now. And today I wanted to kind of go through a little bit of the world building that I've done with that, just for myself, because I think it's fun. Like I said, I've been building on this world, trying to, like, as my skills as a writer and world builder increased, this world evolved along with that. And yeah, so it's been 25 years, not quite 25 years, but like 20 years. Okay, 25 years in the making to get where it is now. Now this world, I am actually editing it and formatting it, the manual. I'm formatting it into something that I can print just for myself and a couple of friends, just because I like having a reference book that I can flip through, so that way no matter what story I'm writing, the world canon is cohesive throughout and the same. And I used to just print them up by hand and stick them in my disc binders, these things right here. But I wanted something a little more professional looking, just because. And I found out that you can do personal projects at Barnes & Noble where you can, upload your manuscript for print, but you don't need a barcode, you don't need an ISBN, and it is not put up for sale. It's just for you. So I'm going to be doing that. I think I'm going to make maybe 5 copies, because one for me and 2 of my friends want one. One is another writer and she wants to write in the same setting, so I'm going to give her one of the manuals so that she can, follow the same rules as me when in her stories. I'm going to give one to my editor so that he has access to all the rules and can double check me or whatever if he feels like it. And then a friend of mine wants one, so that is 4 right there. And then I'm going to do a 5th just to have a spare. And if any other writers end up joining me, I can give them the book as well. And that's just for now. I do think if people like compendiums and companion books and world building books, if people like those kinds of things with their series, once the actual novels start coming out, I might go ahead and make a companion book with this, with illustrations and maps and all of that. Right now, I don't have those things. I'm not a artist, as I can't draw with my hand. And I tried Incarnate for maps and I was terrible at it. And then I rage quit because I was so terrible at it. So I need to either get better at that app or hire a cartographer. And then, of course, I need to figure out the illustrations, either hiring an artist or, again, figuring out how to do it on my own, which I might be able to do because I bought a new program and I'm thinking about teaching myself how to draw and see how well I get at that and if I want to mess with all that. I don't know. We'll find out. I love learning new things. But if you like those kinds of things, leave a comment. Let me know if you enjoy those companion books, if you've ever purchased a companion book for a series that you enjoyed, and if you have any suggestions for things that you think should be added into one, just kind of add interest and value to it. Alright, so I am doing a screen share thing, and I'm going to make myself small over here. I don't think I'm going to stay on here. I think it's going to end up covering me up. Oh, I hate how it's sometimes it doesn't let me grab it. Okay. but then I can pull, I already have my document here. My Legends of Teyvoon Compendium is what I currently have it called. Oh, and I'm at the very bottom. Here we go. So as you can tell, I am at 31,580 words on this so far, and I have my navigation on the sides. You can see all of these things that I have already worked on. This is still a work in progress. I still have a lot of work to do on it. I don't think I'm ever going to be perfect, but I did the best I could, and I've been using D&D manuals as kind of a map on how to format the world. So yeah, like here's the world is kind of where I set the premise of what kind of world is it, and I talk a little bit about the magic system, which I call Aether. Magic is called Aether, and yes, it is like the Greek ether that is in the air, blah blah blah, but it's not just stuff in the air, it's actual magical force that people can pull down into themselves and manipulate to, you know, make real changes, to cast magic. Pulling it down, I actually call it pulling. They're called casters because they can cast, as in toss out from themselves, this aether to do as they will. It is a willpower based magic. You pull the essence, the power into yourself, and then you manipulate it or form it based upon your will and intention, and you cast that intention and will out from you, and then the magic does what it will. Kind of like that last unicorn, you know, magic do what you will, if anyone's ever seen that movie. So yeah, I do a little bit, like a brief introduction to the world, and then I go into celestial bodies. That's the best title I could come up with, but it's just like the constellations and what they call the moon and the sun and all of that kind of stuff. The gods made everything, of course. Why not? If you're going to have a fantasy world, you might as well go all in. And all of the meteors and celestial bodies up there, you know, space debris, is all leftover pieces from the gods building everything that they wanted to build. And I go into like constellations and things like that. Asteroids, blah blah, and then the Wheel of Time. So how do they divide their years, months, weeks, days, hours, all that kind of thing. I do a 24-hour day cycle with an exact 28 days a month. I really liked the idea of it being exactly the same all the time, so you know exactly what to expect. Yeah, this holiday always is on the exact same day. The seasons always start around the exact same time. I named the days of the week after the gods. That is very common in a lot of cultures. Our own days of the week are named after primarily gods, but I did get real simple and cheap with the months. They are just numbered: first month, second month, third month. I didn't want to try to come up with names for every single month, and it just seemed more simpler for them to just number them, and I thought it made sense, you know, from a societal standpoint, really. And I compare the hemispheres of this planet to theirs so you can understand what kind of weather you would expect, seasons, and all of that. And I used the northern hemisphere as the base, and then how our seasons are separated, how that compares to how the seasons in Teyvoon are separated. And this is primarily, so like Teyvoon, of course, is a giant planet, but I focus primarily in one continent called Agri, which we'll go over later. But yeah, so obviously not the whole planet will look like the northern hemisphere. They have a southern hemisphere, and you know they're a globe. It's just the one that I primarily focus on because that's the one where most of my stories take place. And then of course holidays, which again are named after mostly gods or the changing of the seasons, or both. Ha ha ha. And then I actually have 2 suns and 2 moons, and so there's a prime conjunction where they are all in a line, and that's when, of course, magic is the strongest, and it happens every 60 years, so that way in the storylines, every 60 years I can have some kind of big thing occur. And then the Pantheon. I really need to come up with a separator here. I will get to that when I'm formatting more seriously. But I don't have a lot of greater gods. I think I have like 8 Yeah, 8 greater gods. And I just wanted to hit the main domains, like an All Father and a Mother Earth and a death deity and a water deity. And, I just wanted to hit the main points. So that's why I only have 8. And then it goes, and I have a goddess of entertainment, theater, arts, music, all of that, just because why not? And then lesser gods, they are more numerous. The lesser gods and the demigods are more numerous than the greater gods, because of course that's what happens when you're talking about divinity. The power trickles down, and you always have more lesser gods than you do prime gods. And I kind of go through them again. I just wanted to be able to hit your big things that people like to personify as culture. So nature and dreams and things like that. Passage of time, like Vareth is pretty much a time, like a Father Time or Grim Reaper combo guy. And then my Gorich. Gorich is kind of like your Cerberus, the three-headed dog, Cerberus. It depends on which translation you're looking at. Some it's Cerberus with a C, some it's Cerberus with a K. So it kind of depends. Demigods, you gotta have a few of those in there. Everyone needs their Hercules, right? I even have a dragon god and a grammar issue. And then I move into the magic system. Like I said, it's primarily based on like a chaos structure where it's very much about intention and will. But there's 3 kinds of the charge of magic. There's a positive charge, a negative charge, and a neutral charge. And of course, they come from different areas. Yeah, positive is pulled from the air, the ground, and ley lines. Neutral is from generators, so people create neutral charge aether to pull. And negative is from life force, flora and fauna. It's negative, obviously, because you're hurting others in order to pull it. Whereas with positive, you're not hurting anything. And neutral, it doesn't have a life force attributed to it at all. It's not from the air, but it's also not from a living creature or plant. So it's neutral. Obviously, if you are a negative aether magic user, you have kind of like the evil persona. That's your black magic in a way. Of course, all magic is more about intention, but since negative, it causes damage to use. That's why it's considered the evil magic. And then I go into the consequences of it. So, of course, there is a physical cost to using magic. If you try to use too much too quickly, you could, grievously harm yourself. And, of course, if you pull too much from the world around you, you can harm the world. There are consequences, and there's not really anything that says you can't do this or you can't do that, but it's more of a mutually assured destruction. Like if someone decided to do something super, super powerful, they could destroy the world. So it's like, could they have omnipotent power? Yes, but the cost would be the entire planet. And so there's not really a law that says you can't. It's more of there's a deterrent in place to prevent it. And then how spellcasting works. I kind of go in there. It's a misspelled word because sometimes I type too fast. But then I go into how the spells actually work, how you cast them, what kind of casting you can do, how long do they last, all the rules, the difference between curses and enchantments and how they're used and how they are different from regular spells. Psychic abilities, same thing. How is that different than regular spells? Psychic is actually more innate abilities, whereas most spells you have to pull magic from the outside to cast, whereas psychic is a ability that is found within the person innately. And it actually is more rare, obviously, because you're born with it, so it is more rare than being able to use magic, which is all around you in the world. And healing magic. What you can heal, what you can't heal, what are the limitations, who can perform healing magic, how that all functions. And then little introduction on alchemy. I didn't do a big one here because it kind of goes, like, it kind of continues. So, like, a little introduction, but then all this other stuff is kind of really related to alchemy. So, enchanters, augurs, Of course, alchemists, but then the different types of alchemists, uh, which is not really like you're using magic, but then also physical things to create a reaction. And then necromancy and shamanism, druidism, and clerics, because there's all different kinds of practitioners and different ways of performing magic, and I wanted to have them represented. And then I go into like a couple of the magical orders that are particular to my world and how they work, um, and the levels of spell casting that you can be, because of course you can't just have an overarching, oh, I'm a magic user. You have to have a level. Like, you have to have how many years of training and be able to, quantify what kind of magic user you are. Claves, which is like your schools of thought, or social groups for the casters. I go into just the two main ones, and then like I leave room. Like, there are tons of smaller claves, so that way I can, whatever story, if I need to have a clave present, I can just make it up for that particular story, and it's not like set in stone anywhere. I really wanted to have a lot of freedom. I wanted the rules set, but then freedom to play. And then of course factions, which are the groups within the groups, and what are the most common ones and what their goals and mission are, and then how magic in this world works in the everyday. So I do a timeline that begins like kind of early in the days and then goes all the way through to the Industrial Revolution style of like that level of technology. And so there's different kinds of magical occupations that would come with those different eras. Basically, magic ends up being their version of electricity. And so, you do get kind of more of a steampunk style of magic the further down the timeline you go. And so I kind of go into the more boring jobs that you would have as a magic user. And then the schools, academies, where you go to learn how to use the magic. I set out three main colleges, and then of course whatever kind of, there's going to be tons of regular little ones, just like we have tons of community colleges and universities around here, but everybody only knows the name of like 3 or 4. It's a very similar concept. And then magic items. I am a little vague on a lot of this. It's more like what kind of items can be made and how are they generally used. I don't need to list every single item that's ever been made. That would be too much. But I mentioned enough. So yeah, I kind of go into like aether charged items. So it's like we would have electrical appliances. They have aether appliances. So an aether scope is a camera. An aether graph is a telephone. An aether horn is a Victrola or record player, and an aether chord is a piano. So, and down the line, and then a couple of other fancy magic items that I have just for this world, and then the legendary ones, which are your MacGuffins that you can throw in just for funsies. And of course, you have to have religious sects. The gods are real. They visit. They interact with everyone. Everyone knows they're real, and so there's not really an argument. It's more of what god do you prefer paying honor to, and that's where you have the different religious schools of thought are just basically which god do you want to be your patron. And then I go into sapient beings, which I don't like using the word race for different kinds of peoples. I might change that to just say the peoples of. I don't know. We'll figure it out, because sapient is kind of more a specific type of evolution. So I don't know. I'll figure that out later. But I have the types that are created by the god Voss. Those are your main ones. So the Vulcan are similar to dwarves. The Vaunae are similar to elves. And the Icon are kind of like your halfling, hobbity things. Ein are like your, not giants, but like your barbarian types of peoples, the ones that are like very, very tall, 8-9 feet tall. And then your regular humans. And then they actually have, other gods have actually made sentient humanoid-like creatures as well. So the Amayan are from the goddess Amma, and she made like the Umar are like your half orcs. The Ogden are like your goblins, but also kind of like your gnomes. Like I took goblins and gnomes and made a thing, and I call them the Ogden. Then there's the Eigen. They're the not fun ones overall. They're very nomadic and violent and cannibalistic and all that kind of stuff. Then you have the Narians, which are water dwelling, and then I have some peoples that are made by just random gods, not of Voss or Amma. I didn't find the need to label each one individually. Like, you know, they're not Vossian, they're not Amayan, but they just have their own little name. I got a few of those. These ones are like your foresty, half animal types. These ones can fly, like they have wings. This one is just an evolutionary thing. Or they were once 3 types of people and they've now blended into 1 type of people. And then the Notlings were created by the magic itself. And the Aberrati, they're your Frankenstein creatures that like were made by wizards. And then of course I go into dragons. So there are some stories that are going to feature dragons pretty prominently. So I wanted to go through a lot of the dragon lore and whatnot from this world. So I go into like how long they live, what their sizes are, what their gestation period is, how many eggs they have, how many of those eggs will survive. Like I just keep going. And the different sizes and their different uses, their different colors, farm use, military use, entertainment, and then the sports that they are used in. So jousting, racing, Olympics, different types of competitions. I actually have a book series that I'm working on that is centered around the competitions, dragon racing. And so I went through a whole section where I wanted to make sure I had that down. And pseudo-dragon, I need to move this around a little bit. They're out of order. And then how they are in the wild, because like all the previous was all how dragons are in captivity. Now this is how dragons are in the wild, which is very small because there's not a lot of them in the wild anymore. There used to be, now there's not. No. And then bestiary is just, it's not super huge. I divided it by like what kind of terrain they live in. And then it's just creatures that are specific to this world. Most creatures, of course, are very similar to what you would find on our planet. I just wanted to add a few that were specific to Teyvoon. And okay, and there's that. And then it goes into the actual countries. So the Agrian continent, that's Agri, so like take that A and N off, and that's what the continent is called. And I have like 30 pages where I describe the countries, so I'm not going to go into all of them. I tried to do how the government structure is, their economic structure, a little bit about the culture, and how their commerce and whatnot works. There is socioeconomic. What else did I do? Oh, major cities, things like that. And you have like all of these different countries here on the side, ending with the city of the Seven Gates, which is like, it's a city-state, so it's a city, one large city, but it's independent, so that it's, you know, pretty much its own country. And then the glossary, which I need to fill out more. Right now, all I have is the country names with how to pronounce them, and I'm going to go through and add other words that I have that might need pronunciation assistance on there. So yeah, that's my big ol' world book, and just to prove that I have no idea when to stop, the urban fantasy setting is just as big. It is just as many words, but it's thorough, and it will allow me to write like tons and tons of books throughout, you know, the rest of my life, and keep the rules and the particulars cohesive throughout. I do want to do a more thorough timeline where I kind of talk about like what are the major wars, who are the legendary heroes, important turning points and stuff like that. I want to do that. I don't want to do one for every single country. I just want to do it as like a base overview. so that way, at least when I'm writing, if I have to reference a thing that happened that everyone would know about, I can, and have it be the same, point of reference throughout whatever books I'm writing. So, what kind of stories do I have planned so far? I like to outline everything before I write. So a lot of the stuff is not anywhere near ready. I'm still formatting a lot of it, like formulating, sorry. I'm still formulating a lot of it. But there are a couple of things that are fully outlined and ready to go, and that is going to be mainly my Blackthorn Investigation series, which is if Sherlock Holmes was a half-elf and Watson was an adventurous schoolteacher. And that's basically a rural school teacher goes to the big city to study, like to basically use the library at one of the major universities. And while there, some crime occurs, and she gets wrapped up with a local investigator, and eventually ends up becoming his investigative partner. And then they go through and solve a bunch of mysteries and crimes together. I don't know how many books are going to be in that series. I would love to do, like, if I'm thinking I'm going to live to be 300, I would love to do 52. But I can't live that long, unfortunately. So it's probably going to be closer to, like, 10. It depends on how long they are going to be. If I could keep them at novella length, I can keep on going for a while, but they're probably going to be novel length just because I always end up going deeper than I mean to. And yeah, so probably only 10 of those. But it's called Blackthorn Investigations, and I really wanted to, and I wanted the technology level to be like industrial age, like the Western cultures, late 1800s to early 1900s level of technology. I have the Dragon books, which is there's a 3-book series based all around dragon racing. A young half-orc girl ends up becoming a racer as a way to earn enough money to pay for her mother's medical bills, and just the giant journey she goes on in her quest to, win the championship. That'll probably be a 3-book series because there are 7 levels of races, and being able to have her like go up the ladder and each of the challenges and stuff that she has to face along the way. And there's at least 1 book I want to do that is kind of like a collection of tavern tales that will just explore different types of stories that can be found in this world. And then there's my Wayfarers Inc. series, which I've only got 2 books planned for that one right now, but it's just a group of mercenaries that get into shenanigans. So I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble a little bit about my world building and kind of like scrolling through my manual. If there's any parts that you think I should do a deeper dive on, please let me know. I think a lot of it is going to be as I start getting the books closer to ready, then I'll be able to talk about those particular books more, and that's where I'm going to be able to dive into the world building that is about those books in particular. But this was just kind of like a base overview where I just wanted to share my world building passion and this wonderful project that I've been working on for so long. And once I get it printed up in a real book format and I have it in my hands, I will definitely share that with you as well. And yeah, I think that's all I got for you today. Thank you for joining me. Stay magical. Bye.